I just want to start this video off by asking a question. Were you confused while watching the movie Synchronic? Why do they mention Einstein? What does always mean? Who wrote Always on the Rock? Why do certain scenes oddly happen more than once? How exactly does the synchronic pill work? What's the record and needle metaphor? What does time as a lie mean? Why is the pineal gland called the third eye in this movie? What does the ending mean? What is the movie trying to say? Well, I'm here to help you out. The first time I saw this movie, I thought it was pretty surface level, but the second time I watched it, I realized there are actually a lot of interesting ideas, symbols, and details, so I thought it would be a good one to analyze. So to break it down, we're going to use 3 themes. 1, relativity and time travel, where we'll discuss Einstein's theory of relativity, the time is a lie quote, the pill's rules, and the Einstein quote that Steve uses. 2, parallel universes, where we'll discuss the parallel universe theory, the record and the needle metaphor, the symbolic cinematography, and the scenes that oddly repeat themselves. And 3, gratitude versus regret, where we'll talk about Steve and Dennis's regrets and dissatisfaction, the pineal gland and third eye, who wrote Always, the meaning of Always, and the final shot in the film where Steve and Dennis shake hands, and much more. And if you like this video, please leave a thumbs up and a comment, it helps so much. And if you want to see more of these, please make sure to subscribe as well. Let's get started. Theme number 1, relativity and time travel. Throughout the film, we get light references to Einstein and his famous theory of relativity, so I want to very briefly touch on this idea and how it relates to this film. The theory of relativity is one of Einstein's most well-known theories, and put very basically, this theory claims that time is not independent. Time and space are actually related, and one of the major conclusions was, the faster you travel through space, the slower you travel through time. This theory is demonstrated quite well in the film Interstellar, where Cooper, who is traveling through wormholes in space, ages slower than his daughter, Murph, who is stationary on Earth. And furthermore, some cosmologists like Igor Novikov have even proposed theories where traveling into the past may also be theoretically possible. And this film very loosely uses these theories as a basis for the synchronic pill and the concept of the movie. So let's start with the synchronic pill, aka the time travel device. The synchronic pill reveals to users that time is not as we all see it. Just like Einstein's theory, it's not linear, it's not one way, it's not independent. This is why we see the words, "time is a lie," written on the wall by one of the users who clearly learned this while on the drug. Also, Dr. Kermani, the creator of the pill, says, synchronic messes with the pineal gland, so we experience time the way it actually is, rather than linear. As he frantically sketches a diagram of time that's not linear, the diagram is 3-dimensional. And when it comes to the more fictional side of the synchronic pill, Steve discovers that the pill has a set of rules to travel back and forth through time. Rule number 1 is, only people with non-calcified or unhardened pineal glands can use the synchronic pill to travel through time. In other words, only young people are affected by it. That's why in this story, only teenagers are affected by the pill, including Brianna. However, Steve's tumor prevents his pineal gland from calcifying, so even in his 40s, he can use the pill to travel through time. Rule number 2 is, the specific time you travel to is based on the specific location of where you take the pill. This is demonstrated by the X on the couch that takes Steve to the swamp, and the X on the floor that takes Steve to the Ice Age. Rule number 3 is, once back in time, you have 7 minutes to return to the specific spot to be transported back to present time. If you don't return to the spot in time, you have to take another pill and wait 7 minutes again. Rule number 4 is, objects and living things can be taken with you to the past and back if you are in direct contact with them. And in the film, of course, we see the blade and the coin and the leash brought back from the past. Unfortunately, the dog, Hawking, couldn't be brought back because Steve wasn't touching him at the 7-minute mark. Items in the present can be used to anchor you and ensure you're in the right spot, like the fold-out chair that Steve used. So the major idea presented by this theme is summed up really well by Einstein's words that Steve quotes in the film. The difference between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly consistent illusion. This quote relates heavily to the ending and will certainly come back to it again nearing the end of the video. Theme number 2, parallel universes. The concept of parallel universes, aka parallel timelines, has been explored a million times in films like Avengers Endgame and All My Friends Are Dead. But if you haven't heard of it, I'll use the definition that I used in my All My Friends Are Dead video. So basically the theory is, with an infinite amount of time and space, there are infinite universes, all with realities that may differ slightly or greatly from the reality in our universe. And this theme of parallel timelines is super prevalent in this movie. As Kermani explains how the synchronic pill works, he says, "You drop the needle on the song you want to play, but they're all always there. These tracks, they're like time. Synchronic is the needle." Kermani is basically saying that there's not just one straight moving timeline. All timelines exist side by side at once, like tracks on a record. And the synchronic pill is like the needle that decides which track, which timeline we want to enter into. A lot of the cinematography in the film also symbolizes the existence of non-linear timelines and parallel universes. We get shots of time in reverse, shots of reverse viewpoints. We see parallel pathways. And most importantly, in one scene, we see a shot of infinite reflections of Steve and Dennis at their booth, symbolizing the various versions of them that exist in other universes. But I think the most evident and obvious showcase of this parallel universe theme is when the film shows different versions of events that we have already seen happen in the film. We get these alternate scenes where Brianna gets along better with her family, and Tara and Dennis look happier with one another. We also get an alternate scene where Brianna and Steve have an extended version of their previous conversation at the Rock. And what I noticed particularly is these scenes all seem to happen when Steve is undergoing therapy. During therapy, Steve realizes he's nearing the end of his life and is his most reflective. And I think the whole point of the film, randomly showing us these parallel universes with alternate realities, is to show us how we reflect on our decisions that we've made in our past and dwell on how things could have been done differently. And reflecting on past mistakes is the number one thing that both Steve and Dennis struggle with throughout this entire film. And we're about to dive deeply into this struggle, which is the final theme, the most important theme. Theme number 3, gratitude versus regret. The main reason why this film showcases alternate universes and parallel timelines is to present the question that revolves around this film. It's a question that causes a lot of pain, depression, and dissatisfaction for our characters. And that question is, what if I'd done things differently? This question and the thoughts coming after it cause nothing but regret for our main characters. And this clearly is the central issue in this film that both Steve and Dennis have to overcome. Steve and Dennis are about the same age, with the same job, but due to their decisions throughout life, as well as external events, their lives have ended up extremely different. Steve is jealous of Dennis's life, since he has kids and a lasting marriage. Dennis is jealous of Steve's life, since he has very few obligations as a single man without kids. Both of them clearly see the perks of the other person's life, but fail to appreciate the beauty of their own life. Dennis constantly reflects on what he doesn't like about his wife, criticizing her bra size, her underwear, and her music taste. Brianna even says to Steve, "My dad says it's better to be single." And Steve, on the other hand, resorts to alcohol and drugs to overcome the emotions he feels from losing his family, making him lethargic and less competent in his job. And this idea of regret clouding over gratitude is so common in adults as they get older. I believe this is why the synchronic pill only works with teenagers. The pineal gland is also known spiritually as the third eye, which represents creativity, connectivity with others, and enlightenment. As a teenager, your pineal gland is not yet calcified or hardened, meaning spiritually that your third eye is still open. And I think this has to do with the fact that teenagers are not yet able to have big life regrets. Teenagers have the fantastic ability, unlike adults, to live completely in the moment. Even Kermani shows regrets of his life's decisions in leaving home for a higher paying job and creating a drug that harms the youth. And he eventually takes his own life due to his regrets, which we hear in the radio broadcast when Steve is in his car. Also, the director and supporting actors do a great job of making Steve and Dennis look and feel very isolated. They seem very lonely and on their own, with cops who are taunting coworkers who are inexperienced, and a doctor who seems slightly cold and indifferent. But overall, it's Steve and Dennis's jealousy of each other's lives and their lack of gratitude for their own lives that spark their feuds and passive aggression. However, events in the story nearing the end of the film are what make both of them lose a lot of regret and gain a lot more gratitude. For Dennis, it's the loss of Brianna. After Dennis lost Brianna, he eventually remembered how much he loved his wife and how much Brianna meant to the both of them. For Steve, it's his terminal illness. After Steve finds out he likely won't be alive for much longer, he eventually realizes that we all need to have much more appreciation for the mere fact that we are alive. The clock just keeps ticking down, and the lower that number gets, you realize how amazing now is. And through this, Steve realizes how important it is to save Brianna, who has so much more life ahead of her than he does. And this is why he gives Brianna the synchronic pill, as the man with the gun holds Steve back. But of course, that leaves us with the major question: who wrote the message? Always. It wasn't Brianna, because Brianna didn't know what the message was when Steve asked her about it. She replied, "What message?" And if it wasn't Brianna, it was certainly Steve from the past. Steve wrote the message on the rock after he saved Brianna, knowing that that message is what would eventually give Dennis the hint for him and Dennis to know where to save Brianna. He also wrote it to represent everything that him and Dennis have learned during their search for Brianna. Always represents all of the ways, all of the avenues that we can take as we live our lives and make personal decisions. For the film, it also symbolizes the infinite timelines and universes that exist alongside each other that Kermani was referring to earlier in the film. You drop the needle on the song you want to play, but they're always there. Always also relates to Einstein's words earlier in the film, which we've touched on earlier in this video, but I want to expand this quote a little further. Steve tells a story about Einstein's letter about a friend who has passed away, and the letter says, "Now he has departed this strange world a little ahead of me. This means nothing. People like us who believe in physics know that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion." And this quote ties in perfectly with the final moments in the film. Steve will likely die very soon, either to those trying to kill him or enslave him, or to the tumor in his brain. However, just like Einstein and his friend, Steve will always be with Dennis, as long as Dennis has gratitude for the time he has had with Steve and the time he now has with his loving family. Alright, that's my analysis. Please let me know in the comments your thoughts, theories, and interpretations, because I would love to read them and discuss. I hope you subscribe so I can see you again, and thank you so much for watching. See you later.